morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Appreciate you coming. I talked to our board this year, and we kind of approved us doing some broker sessions here going forward. And the first one I wanted to do was taking some of the knowledge I've accumulated about all the syndication stuff over the years, and kind of give you an umbrella overview of it in a presentation here as brokers. I think, as the brokers, obviously being the owners of the listings, I have some pretty good information here that I'll share with you. Interrupt me at any time if you have questions. The last two sessions have actually gotten into some good discussions based on some of the slides, so we can kind of go off on a tangent and go into discussions if we want, and go from there. So this is all about information for you. So basically, I'm going to give you an overview. I'm Greg Manship, by the way, for those who don't know me. We'll go ahead and kind of take you through kind of when we started doing syndication and feeds from the MLS, some types of syndication, some issues and differences. Then we're going to talk about what we do with syndication here at IMLS, and just kind of give you an overview of everything available to you with our partner that syndicates, and then some other things about claiming listings on sites, and then kind of some things we're going to do and look at for future that are coming up. So again, interrupt me at any time, and if you have questions, and we can certainly go off and discuss those things. So just to kind of give you a little brief overview, is IMLS has been just sending data, not syndicating, but just sending data to websites since about 2000. Probably a little before that too, but I know around there is when a number of the portals started coming up. John L. Scott and Windermere, they started earlier in late 90s sending data to those portals, and they were kind of the advent of that. Obviously Realtor.com, we were sending data to that very early. We formally started getting into this, quote, syndication area in about 2006 when we started partnering with ListHub based on some brokers coming to us and saying, hey, I need a way to get my listings automatically onto xyz.com or whatever the sites were at that time. Microsoft and those were around as well. And so we partnered at that point with ListHub, who was about the only ones around at that point, and partnered with them as a syndicator and started putting listings and sending their listings up to the internet versus via ListHub. Now, when we started with ListHub, and it's still true today, is there's two, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, but we've always been under the idea that it should be the broker's choice to where they send listings. So they go in and choose where they do. They set up their account, go in and choose where they want to send their listings. IMLS has never been one to make the decisions for you as a broker. So we've never said that we're going to automatically just start sending your listings and then as you as a broker to come in and decide where I don't want to map. So we've always said it's up to you to go in and decide where I want my listings to go. So a couple other ideas too here. There's just kind of a technical thing is that we did start with FTP as a transport, which is file transfer protocol. We used to grab a file, we'd set it somewhere, and they would grab it. Now with RETS access, what they do is they get RETS credentials, and they can come in and grab the data and grab it at any time, 24 hours a day. So some people will grab it more often than others, some up to every 15 minutes, and some every day, once a day, even less than that. The ListHub, that's our syndicator, grabs a file, grabs data about 3-4 times a day. And then they place that on for the syndicators to pick up. However, even though ListHub picks it up that many times a day, syndicators don't always pick that listing data up that many times a day. So they'll grab the file, make the file. Syndicators will sometimes go in once a day. So depending on the channel or the third-party website, they'll do that at different intervals. So there's different types of syndication. There's syndication, as I mentioned, via the MLS level. We work with ListHub, another big syndicator out there, Syndicator Services Point 2. We do work with ListHub since we've done so since the beginning. So that's what we use at the MLS level. There's also other areas, and I'm going to get heavily into this part of it, is that there's syndications through via service at agent and broker level. So although IMLS does it on the MLS level with ListHub, and we have agreements in place. There are also a lot of companies that will do it on behalf of the agent. So they may sign up for a service, a virtual tour company, they click accept on that terms of agreement, and all of a sudden they're syndicating their listings. So I'm going to show there's some big differences between something like this and a ListHub, and I'll show you the differences there. The big difference is, right off the top, is that ListHub, when you do it through the MLS, whenever there's a change in the MLS on a price or a status, or when the listing sells, that listing is changed on those websites. So price changes go out via ListHub, they're changed on the sites. If there's a status change to sold, that listing is removed from the third-party sites. Any status changes is changed on that site. So ListHub does the changes are changed on those sites, and that's a requirement of ListHub in the agreement that we have with ListHub, that those changes have to be made. The third parties that some people don't even know that they're syndicating through, unfortunately, for the most part, about 99% of the time with those, is that they syndicate out the original listing the first time, and that is it. They do not syndicate out price changes when there's a price change in the MLS. They do not pull listings off these third parties when they syndicate through these third services. So when you see the issue that you come up and there's stale data on the internet, where somebody calls and say, hey, this sold 2 years ago, or this has been off market for a lot of times. A lot of times it's because of these third parties that syndicate data out. They expect the agent to go into these services individually and update your listings manually. Now, we all know that that just does not happen. And so as a result, we get a lot of stale data on the internet. We get the calls, and we have to investigate where those listings are coming from. 99.9% of the time, it is not coming from us and what we do through ListHub. These are the issues that are coming up. And I'll go more in detail into that and just give you some statistics to back that up. So. Also, in some areas of the country, some of the brokerages will syndicate from their own website. So some brokerages will do syndication via their own website and send information out that way as well. So just in a real simple graphic here, how syndication works. Listings entered or changed in the MLS. Listing syndicator picks up the information from my MLS. Listings then appear online on the syndicated channels, from the syndicator to the channels, and then buyers searching on these channels pick up the listings. So kind of that's the process in a very simple graphic on how syndication works. Obviously, you've seen this graphic before, but this is your listing going out, then it's syndicated to all these channels, and that's the whole concept of the syndication services. Is you have it once in the MLS, you choose your channels, and it blasts out to the channels. Yes.
You said we choose the channels?
The broker does, yes, correct.
Right, but it doesn't automatically go to all those if the broker hasn't chosen all of those?
If the broker has not chosen, it does not automatically go. And that's the concept of IMLS says that the broker must go in and decide where they want their listings to go. We do not decide as an MLS where to send the broker's listings. We feel that the broker owns the listings, they should decide where they want to send them. What syndication is not. So IDX feeds, we have IDX and VOW. So that's the cooperation among all our brokers for brokerage websites. So IDX data we go out and send to the brokerage feeds. VOW feeds from MLS, same thing for a virtual office website that very few, but a couple brokerages have. We also send data to VOW sites as well. So those two things are just within our cooperation, and those are things that are done among our cooperative brokerages that are members of IMLS. It's not a third party involved there, other than the vendor that works for you as the brokerages for your sites. We also deal with third party feeds. And what this is that we have different sites that will come to us, and a good example is Build Idaho, if you know what buildidahois.com. But they're a third-party site that will come to us and say, hey, we want the data for my site. and we'll say, well, you are not a brokerage site, and so you're not on the ListHub channels, you've not done that. So what you have to do is you have to go to individual brokerages and say, hey, I've got a site or an idea here, and I want your listings to appear on this site. So we do have a couple of those in the area where what they have to do, again, if they come to us and want the data, we do not automatically send the data to those people. We say, you have to go to each individual broker and say, and pitch your idea and say, we think that it would be a good idea if you had your listings on our site. And so we do have sites where a company will submit sheets to us that says, hey, this broker is approving this website as a site where they want their listings. So we act as a transport. We will send the broker's data anywhere they want us to. We will not do it on behalf of a broker unless we get permission. So there are some sites like that. Build Idaho is a good example where they are a third-party site here in the valley, and they've gone to individual brokers and say, hey, will you send your listings to my site because I get consumers there, and we pick them up and they search. So that's an example of a third-party site where they've gone to each individual broker. I did add scraper sites too, because that's something that's out there right now that there are lawsuits on. Scraper sites, I'll give you an example if you've heard of NeighborCity.com. NeighborCity.com is a site that acts strictly on scraping of data. And so if you go to NeighborCity.com, how they're getting their data is they're under the idea that anything on the internet is public domain. And we have the ability to grab that data and put it on our website, and make a model out of that, sell leads back to you. And so currently, with this type of model right now, we have a couple of MLSs in the country that have actually sued NeighborCity. And we're awaiting as an industry the outcome of those lawsuits. Basically, again, NeighborCity is under the idea that they can take anything off the internet and monetize that, and it's public domain. So the big lawsuits against that is obviously that the MLS copyrights that compilation, and that's a violation of the copyright, which in my opinion it is. It looks like from the standpoint of where the lawsuit is going at this point is that we will probably prevail in the standpoint that photos obviously are content that can be copyrighted. Creative content like remarks and things like that that are typed in and are creative content, and thus I think will be protected. The question is going to come into, and what they're going after is the public record data, the data that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, square footage on the home. So whether or not that's declared as, hey, can you copyright that as an MLS or not, that's going to come into question. So whether or not going forward, right now what we do on a quarterly basis is we copyright our compilation, we send it to the Copyright Office, they issue us a certificate that says your compilation at IMLS is copyrighted and protected. So going forward, whether or not we'll be able to copyright that whole compilation, that's what will come into question, I think. So anyway, it will be interesting to see what the outcome of is, because I think if the copyrighted photos are in play and those are protected, no site is going to get away with making a model out of just data. They have to have photos. So, anyway, we'll see and keep everybody informed going forward, because obviously whatever the outcome of that is will affect us. So I'm going to take you through just some syndication issues and some differences, what we do versus what is out there. Obviously, stale data, I touched on that a little bit. So stale data is an issue with syndication. And again, having to do with the origin of the data, the agreements that are in place. The ListHub agreement that we have in place is pretty stringent. I'm going to go over the actual points, how we are protected as a broker going through ListHub with our data, or with your data, through our ListHub agreement. But again, that does not apply to any of the third parties that are out there that are syndicating data on there. But that, again, as I mentioned, is a main part of why we get some of that stale data out there, is because that data is not pulled off by some of these other entities that syndicate. Security is always an issue because as you put your data in more places, the security of that and the control is less and less and less as it goes downstream. I will show you some data in a minute that although in ListHub you have the ability to choose many different channels, I will show you that there are just a few channels that actually make a difference as to what the traffic and consumers are actually looking at. So about the top 5 sites are going to get you about 85 to 95% of your traffic. After that, it drops off tremendously as to what the consumers are looking at, and what the consumers are looking at after your top 5 sites, it drops way off. And I have some statistics here that I'll show you in a moment that are available. So because of security, obviously the question comes in as a broker is that do I want to send that data to one more place versus the leads I get back? So is it worth it as a broker to send it to these listings knowing that your data goes out to one more place, but if I'm not getting any leads in back, is it a question on where do we send our data? Is it important for us to just blast it out everywhere, or do we want to just carefully choose where we send our data to help protect the security of each broker's listing? So just a question to have when you're looking at syndicating. This is just a bit of information here. Some brokerages across the United States will have direct fee or direct relationships with certain channels, and those brokerage fees will often trump MLS feeds. So again, once it gets out and the brokerages have those direct relationships with certain channels, those will trump the MLS feeds. So brokerage feeds and MLS feeds, though, are the 2 best sources of feeds on the third-party channels. And anything other than that, you're again getting the idea of that stale data building up. MLS opt-in versus opt-out. So some MLSs do it one way and some do it the other, and I touched on this. So IMLS has always been a opt-out. So you as a broker go in and you choose what you want to opt into. So you choose your channels. Some MLSs go on the idea is that they set up the account, they choose everything for the broker and start sending everything out to these channels and saying to the broker, you just need to go in and decide where you don't want it. We're sending these listings on behalf of you already. You go in and decide where you don't want to go. So we've always said, you go in and decide where you want your listing, because we don't want an issue to come up and it's the MLS that made the decision to send your listings to the site and the problem occurred because of it. And I touched on this a little bit as well. Some third parties don't pick up the listings as often as others. So although we provide and syndicators provide data on its routine schedule, that does not mean that the listing channels pick up that data regularly either. So there's a lot of variables in the process downstream to get those listings online. Now with the ListHub agreement through IMLS, they are required to do it at least once a day. So if they're outside that agreement, we don't know what their requirement is, but at least with ListHub it's required at least 24 hours every day. And as I mentioned, ListHub will change status and price and resend the listing, and that's the differences between what we do as the MLS and our syndicator service and some of the others that are out there. Yes?
When you put in an address on the internet and the results come up, often it's only like Trulia and Zillow and maybe one other. So does that indicate that it isn't out there in all the places that ListHub is?
It just means that the indexing isn't done the same way for all channels. So Trulia and Zillow do a pretty good job of indexing the data, and they'll index it actually down to an address level. Not all the channels index it to an address level.
Okay.
So you may not be able to find it with an address, but you may put in an MLS number and you might find it on other channels.
Okay.
But a lot of them do not index it to an address level.
In the ListHub group, do you know how many of those do?
I don't know. ListHub is actually not responsible. It's the individual channels. I don't know. I know Trulia and Zillow, Realtor.com, those main ones, those top, they do a pretty good job with indexing and getting that listing out through the search engines, because, to your point, is that, it's not just sending a listing to this third party and then display it on their website. It's all the stuff that they do in the background, indexing, all that stuff to get it out on the search engines. But not all of them do that, and I don't know which ones do or which ones don't. But I do know that the top three, Trulia, Zillow, and Realtor.com, do a good job with that. So just some information for you as brokers that you can go in. When you log into Paragon, under our toolbox, there's a link here called Analytics. So under that Analytics, I put up lockbox statistics, I put up our website statistics, but what I also include is I include the ListHub report that I get every month. So what this does is this shows the listings going out of ListHub, what the consumer traffic is that we get reported back from ListHub to our MLS. And I, again, post this every quarter with every month on here, so it gives you, as the broker, the chance to kind of look at the market as a whole and give you the idea of what channels are giving you back the traffic. And as I mentioned earlier, this is one of several pages that I'll show you, but these are the top websites up here in our market that actually get the property views, the click-through visits and that. Some of this ListHub doesn't track, but you can see that, up on top here, this is where you're going to get a bulk of your consumer traffic, is these sites here in the top tier here. So that's the bulk of your consumer traffic. That's the bulk of your leads right there.
What's LandWatch?
LandWatch is a particular third-party site that I think, well, they do pretty much have all our listings on there, but they're a big sort of site in our area. I think because of all the ranches and the farms and things like that too.
I just started getting emails from Land and Farm that, I have a new listing.
Oh, Land and Farm?
Yeah, I have never done that, just maybe the last month or so.
I think they're, by their listing count here, they're probably more concentrated on certain types of listings too, but I don't know. So as you go down though, I mean, there's a bunch of other channels here, but as you can see, as you go down in the channels here, the number of consumer traffic starts to drop off. And once you get down to the bottom here, you can see some of all these zeros here of consumer traffic, yet they're getting all of our data for the brokers that opt in automatically. So you can see that most of our brokers that opt into ListHub, they just choose all channels. And so although some of these channels are not getting and not showing us any type of property views or visits or traffic, they are getting all of our data. So my point with security is that as a broker, this is good information to look at when you're making decisions on where to send your data. Yes?
Where did you say that we could find this information?
This is when you log into Paragon under the toolbox on the left-hand side under the analytics section. And I post that again every quarter with every month. So you can kind of go back and look and see. So, like I said, as you get to the bottom here, very little feedback, very little visits, and it's kind of interesting data to look at.
Is that a contract with ListHub? Do you go back and approach them and say, we don't want to submit our information to these places anymore?
Well, we don't as an MLS. We submit it to ListHub. It's up to the broker then to decide where they want their listings to go.
Sorry.
So one of the reasons I'm doing this is that a lot of brokers in the past have just set up ListHub and just say, set it and forget it. And it sends it out to everything. And so, again, is it a good idea? It's good, bad, or indifferent. This is the information we show you to say, hey, when you're making a decision where to send listings, do we want to send it to every place? And then all the way down to
So what's that?
here.
This is the study site.
Is that when you have to go and check it?
one of the other things we participate in as IMLS is we have a relationship with Trulia. They came out with a program about 3 years, or a couple of years ago, that basically tells us, as IMLS, is that they know, Trulia knows that IMLS is the best source of data. They know it's the most accurate, best source of data that they get out of all the feeds they get. So what they did is they came up with a program to take a snapshot of our data and then compare it to all the other sources they get to make sure that it is accurate. And so we get a report every week from Trulia that basically outlines where their bad data is coming from. So we get on a weekly basis where those listings are coming from that are not being changed, that are not being, the price is not being changed, the status is not being changed, the listing is not being pulled off when it should, or when it's been reported sold. So I have an idea here, and this shows in our market, and again, this is through Trulia, but with Trulia, they provide this information, but I'm sure you look at Trulia, this is kind of the same for all the third-party sites that take data from all these different areas. But so on a weekly basis, we get 268 errors from Tour Factory. You can go right down. Even if you have 22 errors on a weekly basis that's ongoing, that starts compiling. It starts getting bad, worse, and that. Now, this gives me an idea then of what the sources of this bad data is. Because, again, these people are sending the listing out one time. And then they expect you as the broker or the agents in your offices to go in and manually change those listings. So again, just as a broker, give you an idea, this is where we get a bulk of our issue with the stale data is from these different places that send listing data as well. There are options on these places, by the way, where you don't have to agree to the syndication part. So in essence, if you have agents in your office that are using these services, especially like a Tour Factory or a Real Biz or some of these, or Real Estate Book, you can say, I don't want those things to be syndicated. I want to control, as a broker, where my listings are going, and I don't want them going out through a Tour Factory or any of these other things that your agents are signing up for to get listings out.
Do we have access to that report?
If you call me, I can send that to you. I think from now on, I might put it in a place where the brokers can access it. And I'm hesitant in putting this just strictly online,
Right.
just because I don't want any type of backlash from that.
But it's good information.
I can send that to you. In fact, if you're interested, what I might do is set up like some sort of mailing list where I can send that out on a weekly basis to you, just to give you an idea, for those that are interested. That's a good idea.
I'd like that because we're still accountable to the Real Estate Commission for representing our properties and everything else accurately.
Yeah.
So it's something that we do need as brokers to
Right.
research.
So some of your agents, and you may not even know it as brokers, will sign up for these services and accept the terms of agreement. And again, not only are they accepting the terms of agreement, but they're accepting the terms of the agreement that they have with these third parties. And some of these third parties agreements are awful. Basically, a lot of these third parties, if you're syndicating through these sites, you're accepting those terms of agreement that say, I'm giving you all rights of the data of my broker to you as a channel. I'm giving up the photos, I'm giving up the data on that listing, I'm giving up everything. If you look at the Zillow terms of agreement and Trulia, and look at the terms of agreement, if you're accepting those terms and syndicating to there, you're giving up everything on your particular listing. Now, through ListHub, we have agreements because of the bulk, and I'll go into the agreement later, but we have, as ListHub, because of the bulk of listings that they have and send, they have some pretty good clout, because if ListHub were to turn off their switch today, many of these channels would be out of business. And so they have that ability to say, we want this in our agreement, and we want this in our agreement. And so, again, though, these people don't. They're going to take the boilerplate agreements from the Zillows, the Trulias, and when they syndicate out. Now, I don't want to don't quote me on that, but for the most part, I think they're not going to sit down and do, and have the clout to get to some of the things that a ListHub can do.
How would a broker use that information, even if you got the report?
So if I'm going to put myself in a broker position for a minute. What I would do is say, hey, look, I've been advised that that bad data is going out. This is what's happening with the data. Are any of you in our office using any of these things? Yes. Okay. Well, from now on, I need to know. I need to have some control over where our listings are going as an office. So I need to know that if you're going or doing any one of these sites, I would find out first of all why you're doing that. Why are you wanting to sign up for some of these things to send listings out when it's already being done? First of all, and why it's happening. Eric.
I was just gonna say, with two factor, aren't they one of our
Yeah.
preferred vendors? Can we just turn it off or ask them to turn it off for our?
We could. You could give me the directive to do that as a board and say, hey, we could turn that off. But I think they have that built in place on some of their areas where, yeah, I mean, there's no reason really in our area.
For
that we
that
could.
error count, that
Yeah.
certainly
Yeah,
puts us
so
in
the
the hot
biggest
seat.
one, and
But is there any threat that you could do to say, we're getting this error count from your information, if you don't clean it up,
well,
we're going to turn it off?
it's agents' faults because they don't update it to sold when
They
it's
don't update the
on-
sold, they don't
So it's
update the
the
price.
It's the agent, but it
Yeah,
really doesn't need to be
yeah.
syndicated.
But, good point.
But in all fairness,
Preferred
the
factor.
agent is believing that it has something to do with NLS and the IDX and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all do it.
Misunderstanding.
We all get those online terms of service.
Right.
And what do? We click the accept
Yes.
button and move on. Well, in those terms of service, it's telling you, as part of this, we're sending your listing out, you're agreeing to the third parties, you're doing this, so to that, we could take a look, Eric, at going to Tour Factory and saying, we want you to
Oh,
stop,
Flame flyer too.
we want you to stop this. So some of these others, are just services that are signed up via other services and listings are sent out.
But the agents, I mean, as a broker, you could say to your agents, you're gonna use Tour Factory and you're gonna agree to those terms. You need to make sure you're on top of all your listing changes, because they have the ability to go in and
That's
change it, right?
That's
Right.
correct. That is correct.
They just don't know they're responsible for.
Well,
doing so.
they probably
Right,
don't
they
even,
don't.
it's
I don't think they
probably
can.
ignorance, they probably don't even realize that they need to do that.
Right, you're right. Now, some of the other issues that come up too with this is that what some agents will do is they'll sign up with a fling flyer or something like that. And before they put the listing in the MLS, they want to do some marketing on their own. And they'll throw a listing in there where they can enter it themselves, and these services will shoot it out to sites before it goes into the MLS. And then once it gets in the MLS, then we get this report that says, hey, this is not matching the MLS. So there is some of that as well going on, where an agent will enter a listing, it will go out via this site, and then it matches it once it gets in the MLS. And that's why we get some of these error counts as well. But again, it still means the agent has to go in and update those.
So the new timeframes are gonna stop some of that.
May, may not. The new timeframes are kind of a result too, is that everything is so timely now. When those timeframes were in place, it was back before we have where all the data is now. And so that was some of the things we looked at, is the 3 business days. I mean, on a Friday, you don't have to until the following Wednesday really, for 3 business days. And that's kind of why we looked at some of that as well. It has to do with the contracts and things like that, but some of it was due to getting that stuff into the MLS, getting that stuff changed, because the data is so timely anymore, and the consumer it's like this, and they want to know, and they're calling, even with the MLS data, again with 3 business days, if there's a price change, and you're waiting till the 3rd business day to get that stuff in, that means then it's going to the site, and you're looking at 4 or 5 days, potentially, if not, before prices change. And, consumers are looking at that stuff, like this. So again, all those factors. So with that, Trulia is it also sends out emails to agents. So one of the things it does is it sends out, if there is a discrepancy caught here, it sends out an email to the agent to remind them to, hey, update your listing at these following sources. Because we have found that these sources right here are not matching what we're getting from the MLS. And as you can see, Trulia not only is doing it for themselves, but they say other websites may be displaying incorrect data as provided by the sources below. So Trulia does a pretty good job in cleaning up the data and making sure that the MLS feed is at the top of the list of the brokerage feeds. But some of the sites will just take feeds from everywhere and just throw them up on the site and duplicate them and do that, and not necessarily guarantee the timeliness of the data. So as a result, again, that's why you get that stale data up there. So IMLS does do this as a service. So some of your agents may have received these emails at some point, basically just letting you know, hey, go out and change your listings at these sources. Any other questions on it? So under our toolbox, when you log into Paragon, we have a ListHub link right here as well. And with that ListHub link, that takes you to our ListHub kind of resource page. So we have a bunch of information here for you as brokers to take a look at, basically to give you information on where you're sending your data and some overview of syndication in general. This ListHub channel information, so I'm just going to go real quickly down these links here. ListHub channels, extended networks, scorecard, comparison, flipbook. That's all for you, mostly as brokers, where you're making decisions on where to send your data. So when you log into ListHub and click that login here, it takes you to the front page of ListHub. If you're a broker and have not signed up for an account, you can just get started right there. If you go and are existing, you can log in right there. And what I'm going to try to do at some point is get this login tied in with our single sign-on, so you as brokers can get that and not have to log in again, and you can see your dashboard much more frequently. So that ListHub's channel extended networks basically tells you is that every channel that you decide to send your data here, so say example, I decide to send my data to DataSphere or foreclosure.com or Front Door. Well, in addition to these channels, all these little channels is where they send their data downstream from that. So these channels partner with these other websites. And so it's basically a transparency document to tell you as a broker that if I choose to send my data to foreclosure.com, it's also going to show up on these websites as well. So that's a link to tell you and give you information on all the channels that you decide that a lot of them, if you're clicking on this to send my data to, it's also going to these channels as well. Okay. The scorecard comparison, which is also that link, basically is just kind of a huge document that tells you all the channels here and what they do and do not do. It's a huge document. This way, this format is kind of messy in my opinion. What I do like better is the scorecard flipbook. Basically, if you click on that link from the login page, this basically then gives you a nice scorecard and overview of every channel in ListHub's channel list. Basically, it tells you a little overview of the channel, and then also tells you, hey, what does it do? Is it listing view detail page? Yes. Redirection link? What does it do? Display agent name? And it tells you a bunch of information on what that channel does with your listings and information about it. It tells you what property types it uses. And it tells you about its data management. So how often does it pull? What does the other sites that it powers? It gives you a link to those and its terms and conditions and duplication policies. Now keep in mind here that the terms of use on each of these channels, although they have each terms of use, the umbrella ListHub policy, which I'll go over the points with you, supersedes that. So that umbrella policy is added protection to just their standard terms and conditions. So also you can, ListHub does ongoing training as well. What it is, how it works, videos, things like that. Just small reference videos that you can learn. I also have put in some links to some white papers just on syndication itself. These are pretty good. Syndication, Clarity did one in 2011, and then this year they followed it up with a 2013 State of Syndication white paper. Just kind of gives an overview of syndication and also puts out what they call their Syndication Bill of Rights. So what Clarity did is they put together basically pretty much 10 points on, in a perfect world, what should syndication look like? What should the channels be doing? How should they be respecting the broker's data, the data that's out there? And these are some of the things that they think that in a perfect world should be happening with syndication, in their opinion. So things like the publisher will display a listing firm contact information, including phone number and a prominent location. Things like that on the listings that, you know, again, in their opinion, should be happening with syndication, but as always, you and I know, do not. I will say, since 2011, when this issues first started coming into fruition and doing that, there's been some progress made because of this, because of the Syndication Bill of Rights, because of ListHub's better agreements, because of the clout they have. There has been progress made. Basically, this Syndication Bill of Rights, and on that 2013 link, it goes through these points and basically, you know, says in a perfect world, this is what should be happening. What they've also done is saying, okay, of these Bill of Rights, of the points we'd say in a perfect world, what are the top 3 doing? So if you click on that link and look at that paper, you can see what Realtor.com, Zillow, and Trulia is doing as of today, as of 2013. You know, are they displaying the listing broker firm name? Are they doing the firm telephone number? And this will go through and tell you on each point that they go what the big three are doing. And so give you an idea as a broker, say, hey, are they following this Syndication Bill of Rights, and how are they doing it, or what are they doing? So again, there has been progress made on behalf of that. So I just wanted to put these slides up to kind of just give you an idea, you know, what the big 3 are doing. You know, Realtor.com, Zillow, and Trulia. So, but just kind of a reference paper for you to look at, give you an idea of what they're doing with the data. And again, they wrote this paper with the idea that there's not a ListHub agreement in place. There's not. This would be, you know, some of the other areas that listing syndication that's out. So just some good points and what the 3 are doing there. So the ListHub dashboard. So when you get an account with ListHub and you go to the dashboard, and for those that have logged in, you will see that. Now I wanted to point this out, that Intermountain MLS, we put our website on this ListHub dashboard because we wanted to get the analytics. Now there's not a way to opt in and opt out of that because Intermountain MLS doesn't send it through the ListHub feed. But I wanted to tell the brokers that are here today, if you want to opt out of our local MLS website, you can. Just call us and say, I don't want my listings showing up there, we'll take them off. So I wanted to give that point because when you log into here, there's no check or uncheck to get it off your dashboard. It's there, but give us a call and say, hey, we don't want them there. So we do want to honor that with you. So when you go to the publisher choices here, this is where you can choose what channels you want to send your listings, and you're probably pretty familiar with this. But they've added in the last 18 months places where, as a broker, you can filter out different channels based on what these channels do. So, for example, timely listing removal, post redirect link, no resyndication. If you want to filter those channels out, you can do so up there, and that helps you make decisions on where you're sending your listings. This is an informational link on each of those channels. This extended network, so that paper I showed you earlier where it talks about the extended networks and where, you know, not only is it going to Zillow, but it's going to all these different channels. This little red cross here will give you that extended network. So in essence, when I check that I'm sending it to Zillow, if I click on here, not only is it going to Zillow, but it's also going to all these extended networks. Now we've tried as an industry in the past to try to say, hey, as a broker, if I want to go in, I should have the choice to click here and uncheck the extended networks, but it has not gotten to that point yet. So here are your choices, some features of what they do, and then there's some ratings as well. The ratings, kind of give you another idea. I've looked at some of the ratings. Some of them are okay, some of them are just people's opinions, not necessarily on the channel, but people's opinions. So. The publisher settings tab up there. So if you click this and enable this, what that's saying is that from now on, anything that new that comes onto the ListHub channel will automatically subscribe you. So if you click yes there, you will automatically be subscribed. You can do it by filter. If you are a ListHub member, they will also usually email you as the broker of any changes on ListHub, of new channels coming on, and let you know that way as well. But you can also say, okay, for all new channels going forward that come on board, I'm going to click yes, but I don't want channels that have no FSBOs or any of these things. You save those, then any channel that meets that criteria, you would automatically be subscribed to.
According to the previous page, it says that we can filter by, let's say, broker contact information, but yet referring back to the list of what those sites provide, Zillow does not automatically show the broker's contact information. So by checking this, are we saying our properties are not going to show on Zillow because they're not showing the broker's name?
Well, say you check one of these up here as a filter and you click filter. If Zillow doesn't follow these, they will not show up on this list. So if you're filtering it and you don't want to send it to Zillow, or it won't even show up on this list, so you wouldn't have the opportunity to check to go to Zillow. So in essence, they've put the filters based on what these channels are doing. So say if you, Cindy, go in and say, I don't want this, or I want this as a filter, or I want this as a filter, and I click, and it filters them. If Zillow is not there, that means whatever you checked is not abiding by what you want as a broker to send your listings to.
I see.
So, again, some people will say, I don't want these filters because I just know Zillow gives me a lot of leads. So despite what they do, I'm still going to choose Zillow. However, again, I will show you what the ListHub agreement protects you versus the other sources. And so, again, that supersedes some of this stuff as well. Now, this button up here, good, bad, or indifferent, if you click that button, this window will appear and basically tell you that I have decided to click on everything, and then everything going forward I am automatically subscribed to no matter what. So in essence, I click that, I accept that, and you set it and forget it, as Ron O'Peel says. Now, good, bad, or indifferent, that's kind of why I'm here on this education class, because there are, some things to take a look at if you want to just set it and forget it. That means that any channel or new channel that comes on, automatically subscribe your listings to. So we've gotten some calls in the past where it says, I didn't accept my listings to go on the site, and then you go into their ListHub and say, well, you're subscribed to it. Okay, I didn't know that, because of the settings. So just keep in mind of the settings, some of those will automatically subscribe you down the road. So.
Can you not accept?
Oh yeah, if you don't press that, and you cancel that, you can get out of it.
So is it up to the individual MLSs who appear on that list?
Brokerages. It's up to you as a broker.
What, I'm talking about automatically updating and accepting all future.
Right. That's your decision.
As an MLS though, we're aware of if ListHub adds or subtracts or
Yes, if you sign up as a broker for a ListHub account, they do email out to you, changes made, new listings coming on, and doing that. But we all know we miss those. I miss those emails. I go in and look at this once in a while, and I say, oh, I didn't know that channel was there. I'll go back to my email, and sure enough, I got an email on it that it was added at this point in time. Yeah, so it's just, some brokers want to work on that. They just want to go in and just say, send it, and just blast it out everywhere. And they still work on that. So that is there as an option. So ListHub is provided to the MLS for free. So ListHub makes their money because they charge for broker reports. Those reports I showed you earlier on an MLS-wide basis are also available at a broker level as well. I know Keller Williams has their own agreement with ListHub, I think, directly. And so these are available that you can purchase as a broker. This stuff is already provided by the MLS, but these are the two things here that, as a broker, if you want to look at where personally my listings are making a difference or getting traffic, you can get these Pro to Pro Plus packages. This Pro Plus actually allows you to put your own personal website metrics on, like what we've done with IMLS.com or IntermountainMLS.com. You could do with your own personal site and get metrics on that as well. But a lot of people get their own metrics anyway through different sources like analytics or something. So one of the things I wanted to point out to you is that our relationship with ListHub is there for a reason, and the reason is that not only have they been around for several years and they know the business of syndication, but they also have a lot of clout. I know we've read in the paper lately about this MLS is now pulling it in-house, or this MLS is pulling out of syndication altogether. So you get onesie-twosies that are going to always do that. They're picking up on the media. What they don't tell you is that in the same period of time, ListHub picked up 38 new MLSs, including Houston. And so Houston is a progressive market. They know what to do technology-wise. They made a decision to go with ListHub because of the agreements in place, of the stuff that they look at and evaluate. And so when you read the articles about these certain areas, some of the things that I've talked to colleagues on both sides, because I'm always looking at, is there a benefit to pulling out and just going directly? Or is there a benefit of not doing syndication on an MLS level? And it keeps coming back to, if we have issues with stale data, what these MLSs are doing is not going to solve the problem. They may think it is, but it will not solve the problem. It's not going to solve the problem of other syndicators throwing data out there and doing that. And there are reasons beyond what you read in these articles on why they do it. If you look at the makeup of the committees that decided these things and some of the people on them, that's the information that I get at these conferences and talking to people, and that's the beauty and the advantages of going to these conferences and talking to colleagues. You find out the real stories and why these things get on to these, like Inman and things like that. If this person's pulled out of syndication, wow, and they're doing their own thing, it's the next thing. Well, reality is, it is not. And so that's not to say that some of these things that people do may work, but it's not, I think, for us to invest money into something that's may or may not work. For one MLS, they're pulling out and basically recreating a ListHub platform, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to recreate a platform that's already in place here with ListHub. So, we've got to evaluate that stuff, and again, we will be evaluating as we go forward. I'd like to see how that comes out. If that turns out that's something that's an advantage, great. Then we would look at it. But again, the stuff we have in place right now, I think has some pretty good protections in it for our brokers. So one of the things I just kind of wanted to go through real quick is this ListHub the ListHub contract supersedes the publisher's terms of use and limits the scope of use for the listing data. So keep in mind, even if you're agreeing to send your data through those channels, you have to agree to their terms of use. If you're doing it through ListHub, you're basically under the terms of agreement that ListHub has with those channels, despite the individual terms of use. So for example, the ListHub agreement, listing data may only be used for consumer display. So they can't use it for any back-end stuff or derivative stuff or any of that stuff. It can be used for consumer display. So ListHub has that in place. Restrictions on use of listing data for any derivative works or other non-displays. Listing data may not be used after it is off market, including photos. This is a huge one. So here's an issue that we're seeing that's happening. Zillow, through these other syndicators, and when agents put their own listings on there, and they'll submit their photos for that listing. Well, what Zillow now allows the consumer to do is to go in and enter their own listing on Zillow. Well, what happens there? The consumer will enter their listing information, and Zillow will say, hey, this matches a house that we've had in Zillow in the past, and by the way, here are all the photos for that listing that you as a consumer, that a realtor listed this house before. Here are the photos for that. So the consumer now can use those photos that were previously with a realtor and now use them on that channel. Now if it's going through ListHub, you're protected with that. If it's going through another source, it's not. Eric?
Can you go in and watermark photos on those sites? Like,
You
I
can.
know you can't do it in the MLS because of IDX.
The physical watermarks, obviously for IDX purposes on that, but you can, what a lot of publishers will do though is if they're on the photo physically, like in a corner or something, they'll crop those. They have outer
The magic.
scripts that just will crop that off. Because once you're submitting a photo to Zillow, if it's not through one of these things, is that basically the copyright is null and void. Because the ownership of that data is now in the hands of that third party, and they own it. So again, this is the beauty of the ListHub. The clout they have is that if it goes through ListHub, they cannot use it after it's off market, once it's done.
How long has that been in that?
This has actually been in effect for about 2.5, 3 years,
So anything prior to that that was being syndicated, they have access to those photos still?
if they kept them, which probably they did. But again, this was over years of developing the product, evolution of syndication, finding out that, it used to be with syndication, it was just basically a way to take a listing and throwing it onto a website. Well, these third parties now, because of these terms of agreement, have now taken that data and they're monetizing it in different ways, and they can because the agreements are accepted. And so it's not just from one place to another for display purposes. It's lead generation, it's monetization, it's all that stuff now. So that's why some of these issues have come up. So also with ListHub, it will rank the listing as the highest, so it trumps the other listing sources out there automatically with the ListHub agreement. It will route the consumer leads to the email address designated by the broker as the lead email address. Publisher may not re-syndicate or distribute listing data to any third party, obviously other than the agreements that are in place on the ListHub dashboard. They must update the site at least daily. They must notify any notice of changes, abide by state law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, this is an advantage of the broker to go through ListHub versus any of those third-party sources. However, again, these third-party sources don't have these agreements in place. A couple of things just to give you information on is how to claim your listings. So I put this on there. It's kind of indirectly related to syndication, but on Zillow and Trulia, you'll notice when you go to a lot of the listings, they'll have several heads on there. So in essence, it's not necessarily the listing agent on the listing, it's other agents. Well, your agents can go in and actually claim their listings on Zillow and Trulia to help with that three-headed monster. So if you go to Zillow, there's a page here that allows you to claim the listing. And what that means is you're claiming that as your own, as the listing agent, and then, you know, the listing agent information, you get a little better prominence on that listing versus just a free listing. So you can go in and claim it on Zillow and Trulia. Both of them allow you to claim your listings there. This does not allow your ranking to be any better on Zillow or Trulia, but at least allows you to claim your listing. It's an interesting thing with Zillow and Trulia with the featured listings. There was a study done by Realtor.com that with those featured listings, when a consumer goes to a website to search for listings, and they put in their criteria and they click search, the average consumer will look through the first 5 pages of listings, generally. Is that once their search criteria is hit, they'll hit those first 5 pages of listings, and then it drops off from there. You'll notice when you go to a Zillow or Trulia, a lot of times they'll have the featured listings come to the top. The featured listings, unless you're paying for those featured listings, the free listings will hit on the average of the 20th to the 25th page. So in essence, the featured listings are the prominent listings displayed on your search results. And because the consumer is not going really deep into their searches, those free listings are in essence not getting the consumer eyes that your featured listings are. So just kind of an interesting tidbit on what these channels will do with regards to urging you to pay for these featured listings, because they'll show up first. And, you know, again, if you have a general search, you might as well not be showing your listings. So that's kind of how they operate. That's why there's such a big advantage to bringing the consumers to your local brokerage website. Trulia also allows you to claim your listings as well. Kind of takes you through claiming your listings on Trulia. And, so some future initiatives that we're looking at some point. Source MLS, right now what we're trying to do from the Council of MLSs is we're going to roll out in the new year a program called Source MLS. And it's taken a while to get all the legal ramifications out of the way and figure a rollout plan. But what this basically says is that we're trying to build a consumer recognition on that Source MLS badge to say the best source of data on the internet is on your brokerage sites. And so if a badge is on a listing or a site, either on an individual listing or a site, and it's got this Source MLS badge, you know it's coming directly from the MLS. You know that it's got the business rules around that listing with regards to the price being changed, the status being changed, and it's being updated regularly on a regular basis. And so what we're trying to do is build this network nationwide in the consumer's eyes to get them to come to sites that have this Source MLS badge and get the consumer to recognize that, you know, if I go to this site and I'm getting a bunch of frustration because this listing's been sold or this listing's not on the market anymore, or that, if I go to a Source MLS site, chances are I'm going to have a lot better experience if I'm really interested in buying a home. Because the statuses are changed, the prices are changed, the data is taken off, it's updated data. So again, this is kind of one thing that we're looking at as an industry to help with some of those issues that are up and coming up with third parties. One of the other things, as I mentioned earlier, ListHub or direct syndication. So we'll always be monitoring, as I mentioned earlier, the MLSs that are going out on their own doing direct syndication to the channels and doing that. Is that worth it for us, or is our ListHub agreement a good way to continue? So we'll always monitor that to make sure that in our market it's the best for our brokers and our brokers' data is protected. Syndication remarks field. So just within the last couple of weeks, I've gotten word from our vendor for the technology in place. And this is something I'm going to bring to our board. But the technology has been put in place that what I'd like to do is swap out our current remarks field that goes out to third parties. And right now what MLSs are starting to do is they're starting to put a separate syndication remarks field in, where it has the remarks, but it also has everybody's contact data in the remarks field. So in essence, in addition to the remarks then, for every third party that grabs the remarks section, not only is the remarks there, but whether or not they're showing you as a listing agent contact on that site, it would be right there prominently displayed in the remarks. And so a couple of MLSs have started this. We put in a request to our vendor to do some technology on the back end to do this. They've just started to complete that. And so this is something that we think, I think is a huge advantage, is to replace that remarks field. So every third party that gets a listing would have your contact information on that listing, regardless of how the channel uses that data. Sure.
So where we have 500 and some odd characters, we still have that, but there'd be something that we didn't really see that printed out our contact information.
Correct. So what it would do is it would be, you wouldn't see it on the front end, but it would replace where we're sending data right now to ListHub or the third parties. We would replace that remarks field with a syndication remarks field that would include, you know, phone number, office, phone number, anything, the contact information of you. So that wherever that goes, no matter how they're manipulating your contact information as listing, you would always have a contact. And it's in a place where people read.
Right, it'd be with the rest of the remarks.
Right.
So what about Realtor.com and, I mean, because they leave our stuff there, so would it be in there twice or would it just not apply to them?
Realtor.com, I would have to check on how it works, because a lot of them, they don't use the remarks field. Realtor.com does an automated, this is 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, so I'd have to see how that would work with Realtor.com, but at least Realtor.com, what they do is at least they put every office contact in there. More of the issue is where there's some channels that will put a number of different heads on a listing. So as a consumer, you don't know who the listing agent is and who they aren't. Those are the ones we'd want to extend that to. And then just the last thing here, you know, one of the things that the MLSs are looking at is a standardization of fields. They came out with the RETS standard quite a number of years ago, but that's never been a real standard. It's a transport mechanism. The ultimate goal of RETS was to get to a point where there's field standardization, so that if I'm somebody that's developed a product, even if it was in my garage, and it was a great product, right now I have to pay money and invest in every market I go to, because every field layout is different wherever MLS I go to. And I may not want to go to this market because it's not worth it to me to spend the thousands of dollars to make it work with that data set. Well, as the industry is looking, is that we're moving towards a field standardization. So that if I am developing a product, I can go to any market and just plug and play, and it's working. What that'll do is that will make the marketplace flourish a little bit more, competition will flourish. And so if we get to that point, that will change the way we do things as a business. And so the first release of the data dictionary has been in place for about 8, 9 months, maybe even longer than that. And so now it's just a movement of vendors adopting that standard. But it's the next phase really of RETS, and it will help. So that's kind of some of the things of where it's going with regards to data as well. So, is there any questions on anything else? Well, my card is up here. Feel free to give me a call anytime. There's a lot of information to absorb. I will, as a follow-up to all these sessions, I'm recording this one here, but I will be following up with a link to the video. I will be sending out this presentation out to everybody, whether or not they attended the session, and you know, again, give you the ability to ask questions at any point on this presentation. So, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any questions?
Good.
A lot of stuff happening with the data. It's always evolving. It's just a matter of trying to stay on top of it. We're not perfect. There's no way we're going to stop all sorts of data being out there. But indeed, there are some protections in place that you have as IMLS brokers. So we'll continue that path. So. Thank you very much. I appreciate it coming.
When you put your MLS numbers for the marketing these fourplexes and where to go, about out-of-state buyers, and I just send because they asked me for the MLS number, and so I sent them the MLS number, and I don't know if it does any good for them, because I'll send it to different people like California people in Florida.
Like a link, MLS number for a different site?
I just gave them, give them my name.
Okay, so they can go to different sites, and if they're asking for an MLS number, so they can go to different sites, and a lot of them will have a little, if you go to that market, they'll have an advanced search where you can put an MLS number in, so maybe that's why they're asking for it. So in essence,
They'll bring that up, they'll bring up
some of the sites will do that down to an MLS number level, so I can go to xyz.com and
Will the standardization, will that help with that, if we standardize all the MLSs?
well, there will never be a standardization of MLS numbers, because there's so many different markets issuing those. Each market has their own way of doing the numbers, but what there will be is a standardization of that MLS number is called MLS number here, and should be called MLS number here, 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 and here, so that I'm not, as a product, having to say, I have to program my products for MLS number here, MLS num here, MLS number sign there, and try to make it all work together. It would be a standard field. And that's the same with beds, baths, address, all those things would be standardized. Because even with those, you see beds here, bedrooms here. I mean, that's where the issue comes in. And that's just with those standard fields, but you get down to different features, and that is just completely all over the map. So you have features like landscaping, for example. If you look at 5 different MLSs on structure features, for example, you're going to see 5 different ways that they do it. And those are the things that they're trying to standardize, so that if I'm a developer, I can say, I want my product to work, and I know if I go to all the markets that adopt these standards, it'll work.
I would just email them to myself.
Can't
do it.
Yeah.
You do a good job.
Thank you.
There's programs now.